meeting. If you need to, be sure to choose your own adventure, whether you are looking for security focus, how do we make code more secure, or how do we leverage agents in the world that we live in today. And try to be a little bit patient with the Q&A folks, because there's going to be a lot of questions and we'll get to them as fast as we can. I think that wraps everything up. Let's go ahead and get started with the keynote. Martin, take it away.
See people piling in now. This is fantastic. Right. Hey, everybody. So my name is Martin Woodward, and today I'm going to be joining you live to take you through how we're seeing AI accelerating how organizations around the world are delivering value to their customers, through DevOps. I get the pleasure of spending the next 20 minutes with you, and then after me, you're going to have the choice of 2 sessions, as Jeremiah just said. So you can either learn more from Christopher about agentic features of GitHub Copilot in your company, or you can talk about how to build application security into your whole pipelines with GitHub Advanced Security, and Dave Burnison will be taking us through that. As Jeremiah said, feel free to use the chat functions, the Q&A functions to ask questions, which the team are going to monitor. If we don't get the Q&A answered during this session, then please pile in to the breakout, and then we're going to make sure we get all the Q&A there. We've got the whole team answering questions behind the scenes. But yeah, it's going to be great. Looking forward to chatting with you. So thanks very much. So as we look around the industry today, we're really seeing kind of some major changes in how we build software. We see the most successful companies are leading, and they're leading by being super customer focused, keeping that customer at the center of everything they do, thinking about how they get value to the end customer as quickly as possible. Technologically, we see obviously, cloud native technologies winning the day, taking advantage of cloud patterns to scale for ephemeral environments, to making sure that people can stand up things in a very kind of efficient way. And that's regardless of where they're deploying to. Actually, we see cloud native technologies being used obviously to deploy to cloud providers, but also when people are still deploying on-prem as well. Increasingly, we're seeing AI is being baked into customer experiences. And this is a trend that's just exploded with API access to these powerful foundational cloud-based models that actually are the same models that we're using to build things like GitHub Copilot on top of. People are building those into their own applications as well. And then obviously, last but not least, developers are building on the work of others. Whether that's building on top of and contributing to open source, but also we see plenty of increased collaboration internally through inner source in the companies that are being the most successful at deploying and doing software development. But there's one thing that we're seeing very, very clearly across the entire industry, and that's actually that we're seeing AI accelerating this change in how we build things. We're at this forefront of a technological revolution that's really reshaping industries, and it's kind of impacting every organization I chat to. It's fundamentally changing a lot of our business processes. It's transforming the way we live, the way that we work. And actually, for a change, at the forefront of how we build things and how we do business is actually how we build software. We're seeing AI being massively impactful in the entire DevOps pipeline. We can use it everywhere to accelerate teams. But the interesting thing is that we're also seeing the teams best placed with mature DevOps practices are actually the ones that are best positioned to take advantage of all this acceleration power that comes with AI. Having the processes, the technology that acts as guardrails to help you ship more quickly, and most importantly, to learn more quickly as well. But having those guardrails in place means you're able to ship more features as a developer with the help of AI too. So we see that across the whole board for everybody. Now, as we look at how AI has been helping sort of improve development and speed up development, the first thing where we saw was obviously, GitHub Copilot and being able to do autocomplete, where you have some comments, so tab, tab, tab. It helps you sort of filling out that work, which is great. Like that was all good and really revolutionized this, how we start building things back in 2021. And then we obviously added the ability to have a chat-based interface to be able to ask the model questions, come in and, learn about code, learn how to do things and ask it to help you writing code, which was great, but very kind of asynchronous, very kind of simple questions that you're asking. You can ask in your own language as well and get responses back in your own language, which is incredibly powerful. But as we move from the first phase of AI code generation to the current phase that we're in, which is phase 2 of AI code assistance, we've gone from a world that was single model to a world where there's multiple models that are good for different use cases and different times and for different styles of working. We've gone from a conversational coding kind of interface and sort of autocomplete to fully agentic assistance in building your software. And then we're moving from kind of AI-infused development environments to fully AI-native environments. So let me show you how that actually looks. Right now, if you go into Visual Studio Code, for example, and look at the models, you see you have a whole range of models available to you. And we work very, very hard to get the latest and greatest coding models in your hands from all the large language model providers, make them available to you so that you can use them where you are as developers. But what we've seen in 2025 is it's been the year of the software engineering agent. Developers can now kind of conduct this orchestra of agents to help them with everyday tasks, everything from coding to security remediation to code reviews. The entire workflow, it's becoming agentic and it's kind of refounding DevOps kind of as we know it. So let me show you how that looks today. If I go into Visual Studio Code, I can switch to agent mode and I can pick which model I want to work with. And then I can ask Copilot to implement a particular feature for me. So I'm going to tell it how I want to do it. In this case, I'm going to tell it to please, add some input validation for me into a TypeScript method. It then makes the changes it needs to make, and it makes them across all of the files it needs to touch, not just one file. It will then look at the code and figure out how to run tests and actually execute that code. And then if it needs to, ask permission to actually run the tests and run the linters and all that sort of good stuff. And then it will look at the results of running these tests and linters after they've finished and actually analyze, have I fixed this problem or not? Is this working? And once it works, it says, yep, this looks good. And then you can go do your manual testing and your verification. You can submit this as a pull request and do all the regular checks you should do as a developer before you then push that into production. So that massively speeds up how we can work. But all of the context of how we build things doesn't just live in our IDE. We only, I'm a VP nowadays. I spend like most of my time deleting emails. I wish I could spend 80% of my day coding. But even for a regular developer, it's only kind of, 40% of the day actually coding. Most of the context for your software engineering exists outside of the development tool. And we, of course, know that because with GitHub, that's where everything connects together to help you build software. So what we've done is we've added model context protocol to Visual Studio Code and to GitHub. So you can now pull in context from all across your development stack to be able to bring in that context and then use that within Copilot to actually help build your software. Whether that's, using tools like Playwright to browse the internet, using tools like Notion, accessing Terraform, talking to Azure, pulling data from a work item in Azure DevOps, whatever, or Jira or something like that. Whatever it is, you can pull those systems together using MCP and then bring that context into how you work. So to give you an example, let's come through and we'll actually use Notion and we'll say, hey, go implement this particular feature for me that's being described in Notion, analyze the requirements, tell me what I need to do and come up with a plan of how we should build it. And then I could tell it then to go actually execute that and make that plan work. Another area where we've seen agents having a lot of promise for us as well is actually in paying down a lot of that technical debt that we have. We know we're trying to deliver value for customers, and sometimes fixing things in the back end gets prioritized down the backlog because you're trying to build features and things. But that's the kind of stuff that holds teams back. So what we've been investing in is adding in things like a migration assistance, an agent. So being able to come in and say, upgrade my version of .NET, and this is inside of Visual Studio Code here, and it analyzes the projects, does the analysis of what it needs to do, looks at what dependencies also need to be upgraded, because that's always the hardest thing, and then goes and starts doing that upgrade. Now, it's going to test if this upgrade is successful or not. And obviously, first time round with a big real project, it sometimes won't be fully successful. So it'll actually ask the developer for help and, ask for assistance. You as an engineer, you are the pilot. You give it the guidance and tell it, no, this is how you want to fix it. This is how it works. It then applies that logic and uses that guidance across the rest of its migration, goes and completes that migration, and then gives you the ability to create a full report over what it did, what things were upgraded, what it touched, so that then you can take that upgrade, review it with your team, and then get that merged and get that pushed out into production. So that's like an area that's hugely important to be able to help teams get even better at DevOps. It's also important that the AI assistance is where you want to be as a developer, We obviously have GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, but we also have Copilot and Copilot Agent mode now available in JetBrains IDEs, so that's IntelliJ, WebStorm, PyCharm, those sorts of things. And also in Xcode and also Eclipse. That was one of my favorite IDEs. That's kind of how I got my career in tech, was based on Eclipse. And so thrilled to see we have full agent mode support in Eclipse as well, which is great. So wherever your team are building things, they can talk to Copilot and they can use Copilot agent mode to be able to help you build. But when you're using agent mode in the IDE, sometimes it can take a long time to get back a result and to finish the work. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could do that in the background? Well, that's what we have now with the GitHub Copilot coding agent. This gives you the ability to take an issue and assign it to Copilot and say, hey, Copilot, go work on this for me, please. It then goes and you give it a task. It then goes and creates a pull request for you and does it. So you track the agent's progress as it's happening, and then once it's available, once it's ready, it creates a pull request for you to review. Probably the best thing for me to do is actually just sort of show you how this works. So I come in here, I'm going to assign this to, let me just assign this to Copilot. And I'm going to come down, assign to Copilot, and then we'll scroll down and I'll actually see that, there we go, we have a little eyeballs saying that Copilot's seen that I've assigned it, and it's created a draft pull request for me. It then tells me what the plan is, and then it goes and implements that plan. Now, that plan might take multiple minutes, 20, 30 minutes to go build sometimes if it's complicated. But once it's done, I can review those changes, see if it works, see if it looks good. But, usually the first phase is not going to do everything right first time. It's like another peer developer on your team. So you can give Copilot feedback, and then Copilot can look at that feedback, go, that looks good for me. And then it'll make those changes. You can approve for, your actions, workflows to run. So all your checks passed and your lints passed and things. And then once that's good, you can then merge that pull request into production. Now, what I actually do myself with this is I will quite often, when I come in the morning and I'm reviewing the work that I've got ahead of me, I quite often assign some tasks to Copilot, 2, 3, 4 tasks to Copilot at once. I'll then go and work on the task I'm working on. I'll use agent mode. I'll use Copilot inside of VS Code. And then once I'm finished and I'm ready for the next task, I can pick up the pull request that sat there waiting for me, and I'll sort of say, right, how far has Copilot got with this? And I can work on the pull request from where Copilot got to, or I can give it some feedback and say, actually, just change these 1 or 2 things, and that's good to go. So it's a great way of being able to assign work to the agent, do that work in the background, and then you pick it up, and you can stay in the flow that whole time. You can delegate a task from github.com. You can go from GitHub Mobile, the CLI. You can also, which is really cool, in the Copilot chat, either in VS Code or in github.com, you can just say, create an issue for such and such and assign it to Copilot, or you can say, create a pull request for me that does blah, that fixes this, that refactors this code. And that saves me from writing to-do statements of go tidy this up. I actually just say, create a pull request to do blah. It will then go and fix that thing for me in the background. And that takes what would be a to-do comment, and usually it becomes a to-don't, you always forget. It'd take that and actually go do that and give me a starter of that change, which is fantastic. Now, I am based in the UK. And yet all my colleagues are based in the US, a lot of them. And so I tend to work in different time zones. And one of the features I've been using a lot just lately is Copilot Code Review. It will actually be able to, you can ask Copilot to review your code for you. So it's a pull request that I've done entirely by myself with Copilot in client side. And then I'll say, hey, Copilot, give me a code review, please. And then it will give me, it'll give me feedback. And it'll only tell me about things that it's quite sure it needs, it'll spot bugs, but quite often it'll spot coding standards issues. And things like, hey, this doesn't look right, and all that sort of stuff. So what I thought would be great was actually give you an example from the GitHub code base itself. So this was a pull request from a couple of weeks ago. And the developer came in, and if I scroll down, actually, we have it set up so Copilot automatically runs. It reviewed the pull request, and then Copilot was like, yeah, this is what I looked at. But actually, when I was looking at this thing, there was one thing I'm not sure about. This says this excludes some stuff. It's really deep understanding of the source code. I think this is probably a bug kind of thing. Do you want to do this instead? And actually, the other developer came in and said, yeah, that's right. This is Copilot's got this completely correct. Do you want to go fix this, please, engineer? And then the engineer came in and fixed it. So that's how we find it incredibly useful, actually, in production for our own internal use. Another area we get a lot of use from is actually within GitHub Advanced Security that Dave's going to talk about after this session. Within GitHub Advanced Security, you get notified of security defects and how to fix them. So now you can generate a fix. And that will actually use Copilot to create you a predicted fix based on what it sees. And because it's got a lot of context, it's actually really, really accurate. And from that, you can create a pull request, and then you can do all your tests, make sure you're happy with that, and then either merge that pull request in or make some additional changes before merging it. It's great when GitHub Advanced Security detects this naughty code, and then Copilot helps you fix it. It's just a fantastic feeling, and really reduced the amount of time it takes for the average vulnerability to get fixed. Again, keeping down technical debt. So some tips I wanted to give you with the Copilot coding agent. The first is a common question is, what model is it using under the hood? Right now, it's using Claude Sonnet 4. But it's in preview. By the time it's GA, we want to be able to make it so people can actually be able to specify which models are being used and things. But it's Claude Sonnet 4 right now. The great thing is it encourages good coding practices and good standards, and we find this across the board with Copilot. The better and clearer your issues are to understand, the easier it is for Copilot to be able to go do that work for you. And if you think about life as a developer, that's actually kind of the point. Most of our work is spent actually understanding what the true scope is, what the problem is. Once you know how to do it, actually implementing that, doing that work is relatively easy. And that's why AI can be a big help for us there. The next thing that I would advise you to do is use Copilot custom instructions to really help you understand how to how to write new code, how you want your code to be, not how your code was. So Copilot custom instructions, tell you the coding standards, tell it how you want to structure things, really helps it say what you want it to be. So that's a great tip. Definitely use that. And then finally, you can actually do some customizations around the development environment. Make sure you've got like a development environment that works, because then Copilot can use that development environment to be able to execute your project, run tests, run linters, all that sort of thing, and really get accurate results as it's building those, as it's creating those pull requests for you. So now you've had a chance to see what these coding agents are. I'd love you to tell me what your use case is for using agents. So if you look in the poll tab, there's now a poll open for you. You go in there and let me know what your use case is, and I'll grab those results in a minute. But the important thing is that teams, I mentioned at the beginning, teams with mature DevOps practices can take advantage of AI better because they have the appropriate guardrails in place. But what we're also seeing is that teams who are, maybe left behind a bit on the DevOps train because they've got a bunch of technical debt, actually agents are able to help them pay that down, whether it's improving test coverage, if it's, building infrastructure as code up, if it's fixing security difficulties or documentation and things. Agents are exceptional at that. And so it really helps people get on board with DevOps and get on board with agentic DevOps. What I'm going to do is, the most important thing with DevOps is that it's actually a culture shift, and using agentic DevOps is a culture shift as well. Technology can't solve everything. Culture is kind of the most important part of a DevOps transformation. And so what I want you to take away from today really is how you can use this in your jobs and how you can apply this. So thank you for your time. What I'm going to do now is hand over to one of two breakout sessions. So you have the piloting agents with GitHub Copilot with Christopher, or you have the Secure by Design GitHub Advanced Security with Dave. So head on over to those breakouts, and I'm going to answer your questions over there. Thank you.
Agents with GitHub Copilot. So it looks like everybody just joined. So let me go ahead and one more time, kind of do my introduction of good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. I'm a senior developer advocate here at GitHub, primarily focused in on developer experience, or as all the cool kids call it, DevX, and in particular, this thing called GitHub Copilot. And I'm really excited to get in and talk about it. In fact, I'm so excited. I've had this issue that's been floating around for a little while, and I'm going to take a minute right now, and I'm going to assign that to Copilot. And we'll come back to that in just a couple of minutes. We're going to notice some eyes here in just a moment. There we go. To let me know that Copilot is on that. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But first, let's talk a little bit about the evolution, both of GitHub, but also of AI and of Copilot. So back a handful of years ago, you could utter the phrase, GitHub is that place where I throw my source code, and at least to some degree, be accurate. But we've certainly grown our platform over the last several years, and we now support you from ideation all the way through to deployment. So I have an idea. I can discuss that with my team inside of discussions. I can file an issue going, hey, this is what I think needs to be fixed. We have a platform called Codespaces, which is container-based environment in which I can go in and write my code. Once that code is written, I then create a pull request where now one more time, my team can come in, they can look at my code, they can review my code, they can request some updates to it or otherwise provide feedback to it. I then have a platform to automate things like testing, linting, ensuring that my code is secure, ensuring that my code is built the way that we want it to be built. And then finally, once everything is approved, we can then go ahead and publish that out to wherever our cloud hosting provider happens to be. But now we've introduced this little thing called Copilot. And when Copilot first came out, it was very much for the IDE. That, as Martin highlighted, where we started was I go in, I write some code, and Copilot can then start to suggest the next line, the next block, the next function, and sometimes maybe even the next class. But we continue to iterate and grow from there, also introducing the ability to start chatting with it. So now I can interactively work with that AI pair programmer to generate code and to get answers to my questions. But as we all know, there's more to writing code than just writing code. That, as we highlighted, I have those issues. And there might be hundreds of comments inside of a single issue. Or I have a workflow that's run, and maybe that workflow failed. And now I need to figure out, okay, well, what went wrong? Or I have a very large code base and I've been assigned a task. And the first step to any task is figuring out where inside that code base I need to start to perform those updates. So we brought Copilot into github.com. And by using Copilot there, I can actually summarize issues. I can ask about actions and what went wrong, and also ask for potential fixes and do searches throughout my code base on github.com. But then again, as we continue on to that next level, we are now looking for something that can maybe operate a little bit more autonomously. And this is where we get into agents. And I'm going to talk more about agents as we continue on here. So GitHub has built out that first AI native SDLC that what we're going to notice is that Copilot is right in the middle of everything. And I've already highlighted a couple of great places where Copilot is able to help me out. I want to highlight a couple of others here. We talked, for example, about pull requests. So somebody goes in, they make a pull request, and now I'm going to have developers come along and review that code. Copilot can actually assist there as well. So it can go in, take a look, and go, hey, maybe you've got a typo here, or hey, maybe you didn't follow a best practice. And not only is it going to be able to highlight those potential shortcomings, but even be able to generate a suggested fix. So rather than just simply a, hey, this doesn't look right, it's even going to suggest something that would then resolve that for me. And we're also going to see that when there's a security flaw, what I'm going to also now have with the magic of autofix is a suggested fix as well. I'll openly admit I'm not a security expert. So having Copilot be able to come in and go, hey, here's the fix for that security flaw is really wonderful. So all of that sits right there at the heart of that DevOps flow. We've talked an awful lot about agents, both at Build and Martin, of course, inside of the keynote. So I actually want to bring up a poll here and ask the question, if you have already started experimenting with agents in your software development cycle. So in case anybody's not familiar, an agent is going to be a version of AI that's able to act on some level autonomously. So I can maybe assign it an issue like I did at the very beginning here, or I can go in and ask it to perform a task. And now what will happen is the agent will be able to go off and begin work on that. And then from there, I can go ahead and iterate. And it also has an ability, depending on the agent, to even run external tools as well. So if I ask it to generate some code, maybe we're, good development shop and we've got some unit tests, it can actually even run those unit tests for me and be able to self-heal. Now, as I look at the poll results here, what I'm noticing is a relatively even split of people who've already started experimenting with agents and those who haven't. So hopefully, this will be a really nice inspiration for you to get in and start exploring agents. So let's start off by getting in and taking a look at agent mode. So I've got Visual Studio Code right here. And I've got a project that is a website for crowdfunding for board games that have a DevOps theme, which, as we all know, is a huge industry. Everybody's looking for that latest board game that has a DevOps theme. And I want to create a couple of endpoints here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Copilot to do this for me. And so we'll notice down below here on my dropdown that I have selected agent. I've got a model selected as well. And I'm now going to say, hey, add a new endpoint to return all categories, ensure there are unit tests, and those tests pass. There we go. Now, before I hit send here, I am going to add in a little bit of context. That one of the big things that you always want to keep in mind whenever you're working with Copilot is if there's a piece of information that you want it to consider, you should always make sure that you tell it that. So I have an instruction file that I have created that's specific for creating endpoints. And so I'm going to add that in, and then I'm going to hit send. Now, that instruction file just contains a little bit of information about the structure that I want to ensure that my endpoint is going to take, my structure for my tests, and where it is that I want those tests to be placed. Now, what agent mode is going to do, and we can actually see this in action, is behave an awful lot like a developer. So it comes back and says, okay, fantastic. I'll help you create that brand new endpoint. And it starts by looking through the existing code. And if I think about how I would approach something as a developer, that's of course going to be the first thing that I would do is I don't know where inside this project. So let me go in and do a search. So it finds my app Pi, it finds my models, it found the category Pi, and it found an init. And from here, it's going to create that file for my categories. There we go, right on cue here. And now I can go in and review what it's done. And so I can see that it's got my get categories to list all of them. And if I scroll down, it's even added in to get one by ID. Now it's going to move on to the next step to create my test file for me. And if I move my mouse to make it go faster, which we all know is science, that will make it go faster. We should see in just a moment here that it will create my, my test file. Once it's created my test file, it will then go ahead and prompt me to run the test. And this is something that's really important, that when I'm working with an agent, it does have an ability to run external tools. But of course, if I'm going to have an AI run an external tool, I want to make sure that the tool is exactly what I want it to be and do what it is that I want it to do. So it's got my test generated here. It's going to go ahead and register all of that inside of my app Pi. And now in just a moment here, it should go ahead and give me the response. This is always the little thing about doing live demos, in particular with agent mode, is that it does take a moment to go through everything. But that being said, this is still far faster than it would happen if I was going in and writing this all on my own. I would also highlight this is going to be one of those rare instances where I'm kind of hoping for a failure, because what I really hope is that my unit tests are going to fail, so that way we can see Copilot here actually be able to self-heal. I'm going to give this about 3 more seconds. If it doesn't get to that moment, I'm going to go ahead and move on, because I don't want to just stare at a spinning circle. I think we've all done that enough. Let's see, maybe not quite yet. Okay. There it is. Just as I was about to flip away from it, then decides to go ahead and run my test. So now I can see, there it is. It's going to run my test. Let me hit continue. And let's see whether or not it passes or fails. So this will now pop up my terminal window. I'm just going to close that out so we can see it. I'm going to run my server tests. Sure enough, everything passes. The one time when I wanted a failure, it actually had everything work. But it will actually detect the fact that everything succeeded and then give me back that information. So it's also going to run just for the individual endpoint. That's fine. I'll go ahead and let it do that. It failed out here, but it would go ahead and pass. So I can see how that agent mode behaved an awful lot like a developer, that it went out, found the code, made the necessary updates, wrote the tests, ran the tests, and away we went from there. Now, agent mode is wonderful. But the catch, of course, with agent mode is all of that's going to be done locally, where I, as the developer, am keeping an eye on things and running things and so forth. So now let's shift our attention to coding agent. And with Coding Agent, this is going to be completely asynchronous and completely autonomous. So we're going to notice the issue, and I assigned this right at the very beginning to Copilot. I can see the cute little eyes. This is letting me know that Copilot is hard at work. And I can see that it's already created a pull request for me. Now, when it updated that issue, that was listed as a work in progress. And on that work in progress pull request, that's what Copilot's going to utilize to let me know, to expose its current status and what it is that it's currently up to. And it would actually give me a full checklist of all the work that it was doing, all the work that it's completed. Well, it's actually already finished all its work. And so what I can see here is it's given me a comprehensive overview of everything that it's built. So I can see that it created the brand new endpoint to create a brand new game, to update games, to delete games, and then also all the error handling. It even went ahead and generated all of my tests and gave me some technical details about everything that it did there. Now, if I continue to scroll on down, what I'm also going to notice is this little button here for view session. And this will give me the behind the scenes of everything that the agent did for me behind the scenes. So all I did was assign the issue. And I can see it behaving again an awful lot like a developer. So it explores my repository. It looked through my directory structure. It found my existing routes. It found my existing models. And then it started opening up all the different files to see what was there, what it is that they do, and then how to go about its work from there. And so I can use this to start to explore everything that it has done. Now, I got an awful lot of questions about, well, hey, wait a minute. If that's going to start doing some things behind the scenes, how do I ensure that everything is going to be done securely and inside of a sandbox? Well, fortunately, this is all built on top of GitHub Actions. And in fact, if I open up my workflows, I can see that there's a customized workflow where I can configure the environment in which I want that to work. So in here, I'm going to install all the software, all the libraries, all the services that Copilot's going to need to perform its task. And in fact, by default, when Coding Agent is doing its thing, it does not have access to any external resources. Now, I can open up holes in the firewall to allow it to do so, but by default, it won't. So it's going to be completely contained. On top of that, we'll also notice if I go back to the pull request that was generated and I scroll on down, that it didn't even run the workflows that are associated with this repository. That I have a couple of workflows here to run my unit tests and to run my end-to-end tests. In order for those to run, I actually have to hit this little button right here to allow those to run. I'll go ahead and do that. And we're also going to notice that I'm going to be responsible for reviewing that code as well. And this is something I always like to highlight, that introducing AI does not change the fundamentals of DevOps. That when I think about the way that I used to write code without AI, I would go ahead and write code from my own knowledge. I would go ahead and copy code from other places, make some changes, cross my fingers and hope that it would work. I would go ahead and maybe grab it from somewhere else inside my code base and so forth. And then eventually I would create my PR. And then what's going to happen? I'm going to have humans come along and review my code. We're going to have our linters, our security scans, our tests all run and ensure that that code is safe, that code is secure, and that code is built the way that we want it to be built. None of that changes when we introduce AI. So I can see all of that code being generated, and I could also see that it created a brand new branch here, and I could go in and explore the changes. I'm just going to open that up real quick here. Sound effects help, by the way. And let's open up my my routes. And there is my game.py file. And I can see right inside of here, if I scroll on down, that it created my create game, that it created my update game, and that it created the delete right down there. So all of that's inside that branch. That's on that pull request. And then I could go ahead and review it, eventually approve it, and then eventually go ahead and merge that in. So that then brings us to Let me go ahead and kick ahead a couple of slides because I tend to be very demo focused when I do my thing. But this brings us to a very important question, which is, have you run a productivity audit? So, as I highlighted, when I introduce AI, the fundamentals of DevOps don't change. But of course, one of the biggest reasons that we're going to bring AI into our DevOps flow is to help increase productivity. So my question is have you run a productivity audit? So let me go ahead and open up that poll there. There we go. Oops. There we go. Yep. So go ahead and vote there. Now, while you're voting, I do want to highlight that when it comes to a productivity audit, there are a lot of frameworks that are out there that you can utilize to help measure developer productivity. That hopefully we all know that measuring things by looking at the little green squares, looking at the number of commits, isn't necessarily the best approach, because developers aren't going to sit down for a day's worth of work thinking, I'm going to write N number of lines of code. That's not the way that developers think. They're going to be thinking, hey, I'm going to solve problems. And so when we're thinking about productivity, that's the focus that we want to take. And one of the quickest things that you can do is to start polling and to start talking to your developers, to listen to their feedback, to act upon that feedback, and then to learn, hey, did this unblock our developers? Did this increase productivity? And if it didn't, let's go back and figure out what else needs to be fixed. And as I look through the poll results, it looks like the vast majority of people have yet to go out and run that productivity audit. I think the simplest thing to do, start sending out some polls, start talking to your developers. So let's go ahead and wrap all of this up. So 3 steps for that AI transformation. Perform that productivity audit. Figure out where you currently are. Experiment with your AI solutions and start to determine how they're going to best fit into your existing flow and to the types of problems that they're going to be most suited to. And then finally, from there, scale out and build out that culture of utilizing and taking advantage of AI. Because the future of GitHub is AI native. All right. So a couple of last little things. Number 1, please ask us anything. We are going to be keeping the Q&A open afterwards. Number 2, request a meeting. And then finally, all of this will be available on demand as well. I want to thank you all very much for tuning in to GitHub Galaxy, and I can't wait to see what it is that you build from here.